funeral in Rome to celebrate the director's life and his work. Quote, "A great light has gone out, and now we're all in the dark," said Sophia Loren. "The world will be much sadder without his imagination. Fellini's legacy is greater than the 5 Oscars he won for films including La Strada, 8.5, Amarcord. It is even greater than the films themselves. Known to Italians as the master, Fellini's legacy may best be measured by the people he inspired." Joining me now is Martin Scorsese, who vividly remembers seeing La Strada as a 12-year-old boy. Over the last few years, he and Fellini had become very close and were planning to work together. And I'm pleased to have Marty back to talk about and appreciate and remember and celebrate Federico Fellini. Welcome. It's great to have you here. Let me just come in, if you could, Bob, and look at this. This is, Marty brought this in, and this is the funeral in...
It's from Corriere della Sera newspaper. Yeah. And that's the funeral as the car is going in the street. But actually, his body was, the coffin closed, was in the stage that he always shot on in Cinecittà, stage number 5. That was his. Yes. That was his home, in a sense.
And that's where people came by to pay their respects for the...
Yeah.
Tell me about him first, in a sense, just to set the stage for how good was he and what is his legacy before we talk about individual films and talk about your relationship personally. What was Fellini to mean to movie making?
I think in terms of filmmaking, this was, we can use the words giant and
master,
great light and
genius.
Master. And, there's Kurosawa, there's John Ford, there's Wells, and in that same sense there's Fellini. But Fellini had something very special, and it was a particular vision of the world that was at once started in a sense with poetic realism, in a way, with La Strada, and as it developed became somewhat more abstract in terms of its imagery, but ultimately very, very stylized, extremely stylized visual images. Yeah. But he created, unlike, I must say, probably more than anybody else, he created his own world with music, Nino Rota's music.
Yes.
The look of people, the way they turned, the way they moved, camera movements. He created his own world, ultimately in pictures like Dolce Vita 8.5, Giulietta the Spirits, Amarcord, Casanova, Satyricon, which is probably the most extreme of that example. So much so that the word Fellini-esque became a common word to describe something on the surface. You can say bizarre or strange, but actually really like a painter working on film.
Yeah.
And also about the human spirit. I mean, I must say his films are so moving. I tried to show my young daughter 8.5. She's now 17. At the age of 16, I said, I have to show you 8.5 because it's very important to me in 1963 when I first saw it. But then I realized that I couldn't just show her 8.5. It wouldn't mean anything in terms of style. I had to start somewhere else. So I started with La Strada, which is the film I first saw of Fellini's, and then showed her La Strada, Nights of Cabiria, La Dolce Vita, then 8.5. And next I'll show her Satyricon and move on up. So you can see the work and the journey of one artist on using film and cinema as his tool.
And what did you want to tell her? I mean, the film speaks for itself about La Strada, because we have a clip here. And what do you want to say about this work which impressed you as a young man?
Well, I remember seeing the film, of course, when I was about 12 years old. And
at that time,
and at that time it was shown in theaters in America, dubbed in English, just like a regular film, because you had Anthony Quinn in the picture and Richard Basehart, and in a sense, it's the poetry of the picture, the warmth, the power of it. It's the road of life, the famous Fellini road of life. Everyone walking on that road at the end, winding up at the seashore.
Yeah. But the tension between the fool and the character.
Well, in terms of that, that's what I love the character of the brutal character played by Anthony Quinn, who loves but can't express it.
Yeah.
If he can't express, it's through brutality. And the wonderful character, the fool, played by Richard Basehart, who always goes a step too far, and another step too far, teasing Zampano, and eventually it's his undoing. And in a way, they're like archetypical of people. In a way, they're almost abstractions of certain kinds of people. In my films later went more towards the fool. I found the characters like in Johnny Boy and Mean Streets pushing all the time, and knowing he's going to get hurt, but still can't help pushing just a little further.
Let me roll tape. La Strada, Federico Fellini. When he poured the water on him, you said,
Yes, well,
that's classic.
It's a classic, classic move in a character like that. I knew a lot of. I guess I know a lot of people, and sometimes I'm that way myself. So it's.
Yes. I Vitelloni, this is, what influence did it have on you? This is the next film we're going to see of Fellini's as a filmmaker. Did it do anything to make you want to be a movie maker?
Well, I Vitelloni was meaning the wastrels, or
Right.
the guys who just, fellows who just hang out.
Right,
Really,
right.
these are 32-year-old guys who still live at their mother's.
Sounds
don't
like
work.
sounds like Mean Streets
Yeah,
to
sounds
me.
like exactly. And when I saw it after La Strada. Actually, I think it was made before La Strada, though.
Yeah.
And the combination of the lifestyle, showing these five guys in the small town of Rimini, which is his hometown, really was kind of an autobiographical film of his. That and the humor of it was very important. Alberto Sordi and the type of humor they had, which was very much the street humor that I grew up with. And I went to look at the film, and I began to realize that I was aiming towards making pictures about my friends and myself anyway, but that was it. When I finally saw Vitelloni, I said, well, that's the only way.
You were confirmed in your own instincts.
Absolutely. I mean, if he could do it about Rimini, I could do it about Elizabeth Street.
Yeah.
And also, Vitelloni finds its way into Goodfellas, too.
Yes.
They introduce the characters the same way. There's lots of new techniques used. And the relationships of the people to their parents and to the girlfriends and the marriage, all of that meant it was very, very close to the world I grew up in, you know.
What's amazing about you is to know how much you love film and how much you love the masters and how you pull from it and it influences you. And bear with me. And in a sense, it's just there inside of your head. Yeah. And I mean, it's not like it's a list. It's not like you write it down. I don't know whether you do or not.
No.
But it sticks there. And when you're making your films, it comes out.
Yeah, I think anything like La Strada, which I saw at a young age, but then Vitelloni, which I saw when I'm about 18 years old, 19 years old, I react always emotionally first to a film. There's no doubt. It's something that I see and then say, well, I was very moved by it. I'd like to see it again. And when I see it 2 or 3 times, then you begin to see why in certain areas. Why did that affect me this way? And I used to tell film students, don't go to study a film and write down everything that you go, because you won't be able to look at the film.
Yeah, absorb it.
Absorb it first.
Yeah.
You know.
Roll tape. Here it is. Vitelloni. Boy, if that doesn't remind you of Mean Streets.
That is
last
Mean Streets.
scene.
Yes, I know. And the voiceover.
Yes.
The voiceover.
Let me talk about La Dolce Vita. I want to get all these in before we talk about 8.5. Why is that the most famous, it seems? Was it because of the subject matter and what?
I think number one, certainly the subject matter of the film.
Right.
It depicted a lifestyle that people really hadn't shown before.
Right.
It was certainly racy for the time. Still is, in a way. You know, it still is. It was condemned, I think, by the church.
Yeah, it was.
It caused quite a stir. And yet there are, from the very first image of the statue of Jesus being flown, a helicopter has a rope under the arms of Jesus' arms outstretched, and the helicopter's flying with the statue below it. Mm-hmm. And they buzz the rooftop. Some women are nude sunbathing. And the statue of Jesus goes over them. And right there, from the opening of the film, you begin to realize that this is the symbolism is going to be very, very strong. And the film is episodic. It's episodic and just really goes through and analyzes a life where the values are gone, a lifestyle where the values are nothing.
Fellini was not a very religious man.
Not really.
I understand.
Yeah.
I mean, you are.
Yeah.
I mean, you have an enormous sense of your Catholic roots. In fact, you thought about being a priest.
Yes, but he's Italian, though. In Italy, there's a special relationship, I think, with the church.
Yes,
as you know, he was there in the church in Piazza del Popolo. They had the body there, and he was buried with full honors and with the church. Even though they may have condemned some of his films, they pointed out that he listened to different voices, they said.
Yes.
You know?
All right. Here it is. La Dolce Vita. You said as we were watching that he loved to stir it up.
Yeah,
I mean, he was a
liked
troublemaker. He knew what he was doing, and he knew this was tweaking the church and tweaking the people.
Yeah. And he gets you talking about it. I mean, the film is it really is a very moral film, La Dolce Vita. And it's about the loss of innocence, and it examines that lifestyle. It also examines, where Italy is at that time, 1959. It's really quite extraordinary. And
the
then,
decadence
of course,
and the rest
the
of
decadence,
it.
yeah.
8.5. His most personal film?
Yeah. On the surface, I think.
Yeah.
You see, I think his films were all extremely personal, but Vitelloni is certainly, even his brother is acting in it, too. But 8.5, I mean, La Dolce Vita was the set piece. It was 3 hours long. There were episodes. There was no story, and there was a major break with a major stylistic break with his previous films, Nights of Cabiria, Vitelloni, Il Bidone, and La Strada. So when he made 8½, he went about 10 light years further, more than anybody else, I think. I think the only other person, well, there's a number of great filmmakers, but Ingmar Bergman's Persona is the other film where when he made Persona, he jumped to another level, another perception. And 8½, was so extraordinary. I remember seeing it on 57th Street at the Festival Theater as soon as it opened, and trying to capture it. I went home and drew pictures from it. Luckily, I had seen it about 4 weeks before I shot my very first short film at NYU, and I just wanted to capture, first of all, the camera movement.
Yeah.
Always keep the camera moving, because it became choreography in the way the camera moves and the camera moving in and out. The use of blacks, very strong blacks against white, the contrasts. The cutting back and forth through time and memory and dreams. At first we tried to study the film after seeing it for the first time to try to figure out what was going on. And then you realize you don't have to, because it's very simple, really. You know, of course, some of the public was confused when I walked out of the theater that night. A woman was standing in the street trying to get a taxi. She goes, "Did you just see that film?" I said, "Yes." She said, "What did you think of it?" I thought it was great. She goes, "Well, I don't think it was very good. Maybe some good photography." She said, "That's about all. I don't understand what the hell it's about."
Yes.
But but it became extremely famous, and it really is still to this day a film that a lot of people can learn from.
Okay, roll tape, 8½. Yeah, you just said to me what's incredible about this film is this particular sequence. It's all a fantasy.
Totally a fantasy. Yes, he has his wife and his mistresses and his mother and his aunts all living all together and all attending him. Yes.
How close did you get with him? I mean, when did you first meet, and how did the friendship develop?
I met him back in 1970 in Sorrento Film Festival, and got to see him and speak to him and pay homage, you know. And over the years, by around late 70s, we became very, very close. I visited many times. I was living in Rome for a while and saw him quite often.
Visit him on the set?
Yeah, on the set of City of Women with my mother and father, and we'd have lunch at Cinecittà with him and that sort of thing. And over the years, as I didn't go back to Italy for a while, in the mid-'80s, we missed each other for a little while. And then finally, a few years ago, about 4 years ago, I was in the Venice Film Festival, and he came over and said, "You know, we don't see each other anymore. Why don't you come back to Rome?" And I did a year later, and at which point we had a lunch at Suso Cecca D'Amico's house.
Yes.
She's the one who's written practically, her credit is on practically every great Italian film from 1945 on. And at that point, Rafael Donato, who was my associate, Federico took him aside and said he would love to, he wondered if Martin would help him the way Coppola had helped Kurosawa to get another picture made, because his latest picture, The Voice of the Moon, was not released in America. And he was just trying to get another picture made. He said, if somebody just gives me some money just to photograph these objects in a room, he said, like this, I move them around, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
And so we spoke about it afterwards, and he had a producer named Leo Pescarola, and he had an idea of director's notebooks, it's called. And he had a series of projects. The first one was on the actor.
Right.
The next one was on the producer. Another one was on the cameraman. And series of things that would be done, of course, in his beloved Cinecittà, stage number 5. And within a few months, we were able to work out, there was some money from Europe, and we were able to work out Universal Pictures to complete the financing of the
And you were
picture.
going to be what, executive producer?
Executive producer, really. To really have the honor to put my name there, and then go on the set for a couple of days just to watch, because it was everybody in Italy too was very excited, because they said Maestro's going to work again, and it was like a circus when he worked. See, everybody, because he loved the circus.
It was like one giant party
it was a
with
big party
everything
in Rome.
going on.
And they'd go and watch all the extras going in, because he always had very strange people and stuff like that. And unfortunately, they said, well, first you had to have the bypass, they said, and then after the bypass, we were going to shoot in the fall. And from the bypass, he was getting himself back together, and then unfortunately, it just didn't work out. But we were ready to go.
A couple of things. One, when you won the, didn't he call you at the time of the Oscar?
Yes, yeah.
And said what? Just congratulations, or did he send a telegram, or was?
He called. His voice was very weak, but this was right when he got his Oscar.
Right.
Because I wasn't there.
Right.
He got his Oscar, his 5th.
Right.
And it was a long trip. He only came for one day. I'd hoped he was going to stay in New York for a couple of days, but he didn't. He flew from Rome to Los Angeles, and afterwards spoke to me on the phone, and his voice was quite weak after the day after the show, and I became a little worried. But he just, professed his love and appreciation, and
What does
couldn't
it
wait to
say?
get to see him.
I mean, it must be for you to have so much admiration, so much respect for him, and to be influenced by him, and to know that because of the nature of this beast that the both of you worked in, the movie business, here was someone that good, and who brought such an excitement and was such a catalyst, couldn't raise the money to do what he wanted to do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, and it's really. It's the sorry state of film today, world cinema today. It's just a terrible situation. I mean, great filmmakers like that. I tried to get Voice on the Moon released in America. Only one company, Miramax, is willing to work on it with us, Harvey Weinstein. But a few of the exhibitors we showed it to wouldn't even show it. And it's a good picture. I think it's better than Fred and Ginger, the one he did a few years earlier, and it will be shown. But after a while, Federico told Raphael, he said, listen, maybe we should wait a few years, let a mystique gather around the film, you know, and then show it. But it's a shame that Italy could not get together. I know his friends in Italy have said now that they're making speeches about him. 5 years ago would have been more helpful if they'd given him the money.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
All those people now who rise to say how great he was when he was coming to him to ask for some money were saying, well, we don't know if it's bankable or if it's commercial. You couldn't go to the funeral.
No.
Because?
Well, I tell you, it's a personal thing. That would have been the third this year.
Your father?
Robert De Niro's father.
Right.
And my father and Federico. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. He died pretty similar to what my father had.
There was a bypass, then
bypasses, and then
coma,
a stroke, and then a coma.
Yeah,
exactly the same. And he lasted exactly the same days
12
in
days
the coma.
Or 10 days, 12 days. Yeah.
And also, Federico was approaching his 50th anniversary. My mother and father were approaching their 60th. Yeah. And it was all too. We feel that we're going to release his films. We're releasing La Strada now in America with Kino International. We're going to release, hopefully, Satyricon, re-release it, maybe Casanova, La Dolce Vita. We're going to keep the name alive that way, and the memory alive of the films.
He had met your mother and father.
Oh, he knew them very well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well,
and when your father died in August, did he communicate with you at that time?
Absolutely. Of course he sent, I mean, I sort of blank out a lot of it, but he did send, you know, with in Italian, a long note, you know, expressing his condolences, because they knew them. They knew most of the Italian directors, but especially Federico. Knew them very well.
Sum up for me in less than a minute his contribution to filmmaking.
Well, you know, this is the first 100 years of film, and you have people like Griffith, who give us D.W. Griffith, who gives us the vocabulary in a way, and then you have people who take it and go to another level completely, a whole other level, where they explore film to the point of that it can do something that no other art form does. And this is what Fellini is, I think, you know, is an artist of such magnitude that the combination of camera movement, music, the actual themes of the piece, the look of the film, all of this combines together to make it unlike anything. It's like looking at a Botticelli painting. You say only Botticelli can do that. You know? Great to have you here. Thank you. Thank you very much. Federico Fellini died at, what, 73, I think. 73 or 74 in Rome. We thank you for joining us this evening. See you next time.